Okay, thank you everyone for adhering to the 10 minutes. Keep me out of trouble. Okay, so we have our esteemed panel here. I'd like to give some short introductions before a couple of short presentations from the four panellists we haven't heard from yet. So we've already been introduced to Nikki and Nadia. Welcome back. We have Mardi Webber here. Mardi's a mentally healthy workplace consultant at Return to Work SA. Peter Highhorick on the panel here. Peter, thanks, is with the Australian Industry Group. He works predominantly across the manufacturing sector to improve worker health. We have Gavin on the end. Gavin Fairbrother works in my team, the Workplace Advisory Service. He's currently managing a Healthy Workplaces project jointly funded by SA Health and Safe Work SA. He has a particular interest or focus on small business. And last but not least, Tim, thanks for coming. Tim Mayers is the Director of Strategic Projects at the South Australian Department of Industry and Skills. And he has a particular background in economics and productivity. So, as I said, what we've got for you now is four very short presentations, and after that we'll open up the panel for discussion. So, Mardi, thank you.
Thanks, Shane, for that introduction. Also to Nikki and Nadia for your talks in relation to integrated approaches. Quite inspirational, really, which is fantastic. I'll be talking about an integrated approach from a mentally healthy workplace perspective. This is the current thinking around what best practice thinking is in relation to an integrated approach for mental health, and you'll recognise this because Nikki brought this slide up as well, which is great. So it's a three-pronged approach. So on the right-hand side, you've got managing illness, and I guess this is a traditional approach within workplaces as far as having an employee assistance program in place, supporting people with mental health conditions, picking up on those early signs that people might be struggling in the workplace and looking at ways we can reduce stigma when it comes to mental health conditions. On the left-hand side, we've got preventing harm, and this is really the WHS part of the pie. And that's really saying, just like we do physical health and safety, are we actually looking at what are those risks in the workplace that can impact on mental health, taking a risk management approach, minimising risks, but also building protective factors in the workplace. So it might be things like managing workloads to minimise stress, looking at bullying and harassment, and as someone mentioned before, managing change within the workplace. In the middle, we've got promoting the positive. So this is really, I see, a positive psychology approach. This is really about people not just being at the workplace, but really thriving within the workplace. So it's focusing on people's strengths and capacity, supporting employee growth, fostering healthy relationships, having those really good leadership styles in the workplace. And it's also a recognition about the links between mental health and physical health, is what we've spoken about. As Nikki also said, an integrated approach does look at the different disciplines, so human resources, WHS, psychology, public health. And I guess from a practical workplace perspective, as Nikki said, it's about human resources talking to WHS, talking about health promotion, everyone actually working together, not working in silos when it comes to creating a mentally healthy workplace. The approach, the integrated approach, also reflects the mental health continuum. And this is really saying that people's mental health varies in our lifetime. It's not a static thing, and that we'll move up and down the continuum depending on what's happening in our life, stressors, protective factors. And it's also reflective of what is happening within our workplaces. So you'll have some people at one end, positive, healthy, functioning, other people in the middle, and maybe some people where their mental health is being severely impacted on every day. So it's a great visual representation of how people can actually be supported in the workplace when it comes to a mentally healthy workplace. And it's also, I guess, a reminder that when we're talking about a mentally healthy workplace, what we're talking about is actually everyone in the workplace. It's everyone in that continuum. So in terms of supporting people in the green, what this is about is really focusing in on positive mental health and getting people to flourish in the workplace. And people tend to show resilience and high levels of wellbeing. There's a focus on really good work design to promote high performance and high quality connections. In relation to the yellow and orange, this is about recognising what are the risks in our workplace that can negatively impact on our mental health and doing something about it in a proactive manner. It's also recognising maybe that there are people that might be struggling, picking up on signs and symptoms, having supportive conversations and connecting them to support. And at the red end, it's about having policies and procedures around supporting individuals where their mental health may be struggling, possibly people with mental health conditions, having effective return to work systems in place, having reasonable workplace adjustments. The workplace is a protective factor for someone's mental health, and so what we're trying to do is create an environment where as more people as we can actually be in that green. So we want people to be thriving, we want them to be productive, we want them to be enjoying work and to be fully engaged. And it's also making sure that a mentally healthy workplace isn't just seen as a fad or maybe a once-off event where maybe we get involved in Are You OK Day every year, but then we don't talk about mental health for the rest of the time. So it is just like WHS. I've been WHS for 30 years. I've seen how we've really integrated WHS into our organisations. It's the same with a mentally healthy workplace. How can we embed it into our policies, practices, plans? And a really good starting point is saying, well, how does a mentally healthy workplace actually link with our organisational values? But this all sounds like a lot to do already on a busy workplace. Maybe we've got limited resources. So the good news is that you don't have to address everything at once. Again, when you don't think about your WHS system, we didn't roll out the whole system in one big piece. We actually looked at what are the priorities and implemented it over time. It's the same with a mentally healthy workplace. So think about those bite-sized pieces. So I've been working with organisations now for the last 2.5 years. I provide free assistance to workplaces that want to do more in the area of workplace mental health, so please come and see me afterwards. So what have workplaces been doing? In relation to an integrated approach, okay, in relation to managing illness, certainly employee assistance programs, really understanding what that program means within the workplace and other free support services. And breaking down the stigma in relation to using it, as we heard from one participant here today. Training mental health first aiders in the workplace, having information sessions about mental health signs and symptoms, having effective return to work systems in place with mental health conditions. Preventing harm, I'm seeing a real shift in relation to this, in relation to WHS committees now having more conversations about not only physical hazards in the workplace, but what are the psychological hazards that can impact on workers and what can we do about that as is reasonably practicable. I'm seeing conversation shifts in workplaces, so there's more open conversations about workplace stressors, so maybe it's workloads, etc., conversations happening in toolbox talks, and certainly more policies and procedures around psychological health. And promoting the positive, certainly that connection between physical and psychological health, so monthly calendar of wellbeing activities, and I know Peter will talk about this in more detail. Leadership training, where we are looking at leaders knowing more about mental health, the importance of mental health, about having supportive conversations. Workplaces are starting to understand the health benefits of work, and there's a focus on people's strengths and really starting to celebrate achievements and praising efforts. This is just one quote, just from a small employer, and it just says, we only have one employee, but I make sure I ask him every day how his day has been. I wanted him to know that we didn't take him for granted. And I guess this is saying that improving wellbeing with your workers doesn't have to be complicated, formal, or take up a lot of time. But as Nikki said before, it is about going beyond compliance, and it is about creating that culture of care within the workplace. You don't have to start off with a blank piece of paper either. So we've seen some fantastic resources that Nadia talked about from SA Health. Some other useful resources, if you go to Return to Work SA's website, type in mentally healthy, you'll find some resources about mental health in the workplace as well as my role. Heads Up, Beyond Blue and the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance have put together a fantastic website, evidence-based resources. There's information about developing strategies, but other information as well for individuals and for managers. Superfriend has really good information about positive mental health and thriving in the workplace. So certainly a great website to look at. And if you are looking at, well, what are those legislative minimum requirements when it comes to work-related psychological health and safety, then Safe Work Australia has recently put out a guide to provide guidance to employers in that area, not only from a prevention, but also from an early intervention and return to work perspective. So therefore, no matter what industry you work in or the size of your workplace, there are areas that you can take action in relation to creating a mentally healthy workplace. Think about the integrated approach. Think about manageable bite-sized pieces. Remember, it is not a destination, it's a journey. I think the most important thing is just to start, no matter how small, and then to build from there. Thank you.